This baby here. You're probably watching me just fumble right now, and they probably are. And I'm going to see if we're on here. We should be. They're probably watching, and I don't know. How's that? We're on air, and we don't know it yet.
Fake it till you make it.
This is the pre-show. Yeah, we are on right now. Here we go. So let me put this on and turn down the volume here. There we go. All right, we are on air. So welcome in about, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to get started. So I guess that would be right now. So, hey, this is Denis Nurmela, and I'm your host of the brand new A Bit of Advice on Air. That's right. So you've been watching for the last 3 months my 1 to 3 minute videos of some kind of advice. And I've given advice for just about everything except for how to put makeup on. And I'll come up with that later. But in business, in life, and all that stuff, there's all kinds of tips that we can learn from one another. And I'll share with you one thing is a little bit of my background. Since this is the first time we're doing the show live on air. And hey, Yannick is on here. Good to see you, Yannick. You guys go ahead and post some questions for myself or the guest, by the way, as we get going here. Those that don't know me, I've built companies since I was 9 years old, which was a few months ago. And I've built some companies that have been to the multi-million-dollar levels of success. I've also crashed some to the ground at raging speeds and still landed on the runway safely with most of them. And I'll tell you that my biggest love right now is teaching others the things that I've learned. And we are definitely doing that today. And, you know, when you get somebody like myself that has done a lot of things and gets excited and gets passionate about something like teaching right now, then guess what? You've created a monster. You know what I'm saying? So I thought, who would we have on our very first show of Bit of Advice on Air? That's called a bridge, by the way. You like that? Yeah. So we've got the Monster Motivator, Mr. Daley here on the show. Welcome.
Big D. Thank you so much for having me. And it's the first episode, and I actually feel a little VIP. I got to be honest with you.
You are VIP. In fact, for those of you that are on here, there's going to be a VIP reception on the outside they're setting up for right now. So you are VIP, my friend.
Yeah.
This is the first. You'll be the only person to ever say you were the first guest.
That's it. They can't. It's that first dollar,
you
right,
got
that
it.
we put on the wall.
That's right. Right. You don't mind if we just duct tape you up on the wall later, okay?
That's it. That's called close enough construction.
That's right. So Dave Daley is a motivational speaker. He does his own television show, in fact, too. And he'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get things going here. He's interviewed all kinds of folks, as have I. So we're full of, not only are we full of it, of ourselves, but we're full of great advice we've heard from other people. So what you're getting today is a powerhouse of ideas from Dave Daley and myself, and we're going to share, that's the whole premise of this show, is to share bits of advice that we've had. So we're going to talk about those bits of advice. You own your own company. You've had other companies in the past.
I have. So
tell us a little bit about your background, and then throw in some of the little things that you've learned as you're telling us your background.
Boy, I'll tell you, there's a truckload. You know, my story definitely did not start out. I had a rough paper route. As they say. It was a rough paper route. I was left back in the second grade. I was diagnosed with ADD. Said I had a learning disorder. Never graduated high school. And at 19, I'm sitting in a jail cell looking at 8 to 10 if things don't go my way. So to say that, it was a rough paper route. But I certainly learned a lot about, as I got older, about really understanding who you are and who you surround yourself with is vital. And I share this in my keynote. There's a gentleman named Tommy that came into my life and really changed the whole direction early on, luckily.
Oh, that's great. So who is this Tommy?
Well, Tommy's a gentleman that came into my life when I left high school. And I dropped out. That was not the greatest day in the world by any means. And my dad was definitely old school guy, right? World War II vet, lace up your boots, get to work. And he said, when I told him that I dropped out of high school, he says, well, that's great. So now what are you going to do? How are you going to make a living? Yeah. What are you going to do to support yourself? And I thought, It's a good question. What am I going to do? So I went back to my old conditioning, Dennis, right? My conditioning reminded me that all I could do was be that physical guy, right? I was that elephant in the circus. You know, when they train those baby elephants to stay in one spot, they put a rope around its back leg and they put a stake in the ground. Every time that elephant tries to walk away, that stake stops it, right? But then when that elephant becomes a grown adult and it feels that tension, it stops pulling because its conditioning reminds it that's all it could do. But in reality, that grown adult elephant can rip that stake out of the ground anytime it wants. I was that elephant. So make a long story short, we were in a major recession, kind of like 2007, 2008. Nothing was going on. Job sites were being shut down. Construction was shut down. Banks weren't lending. So I don't know out there how many people remember what you had to do before the internet to look for work.
Oh my
There's
goodness.
a question.
Oh yeah.
There's a question. So help when it adds. There I am, right? I flip open and it's selling copiers and fax machines B2B.
All right.
And it said no experience necessary. I thought,
I have that.
that's my resume. Right? I have no experience and they're willing to train. The only problem was I didn't even know what B2B meant.
I love it. You know, that's funny. I just had my thought in my head. What if some of our listeners don't know what that is?
You know, business to business.
Right.
But I made the call, met Tommy. Tommy mentored me, and he showed me that you don't have to accept a label. You can accept whatever label you want, but you don't have to accept every label or any label that you want. Meaning, I saw Tommy. Tommy walked my path 15 years before me. He was a kid from the neighborhood that wasn't supposed to make it. When I went in to see Tommy, here's what I saw. I saw a kid from the neighborhood that walked a walk like me, wasn't supposed to make it. Not only was he making it, but I also noticed the general managers, the sales managers, the office managers were the ones that society says were supposed to flourish, right? They had the degrees on the wall.
Right.
Tommy was the kid that didn't graduate high school, always in trouble. Now that doesn't mean that degrees are bad. That doesn't mean that school is bad, but it means that anything is possible when you surround yourself with the right people, when you start to build that self-image.
That's good. Well, I think you bring up a good point here, which is a great bit of advice here, is that you found somebody. By the way, those of you, hello, Lisa, Larry, Nicole, others that are watching us on Facebook Live right now, you guys are welcome to throw in questions at any time also. That
Absolutely.
We'll answer.
Love
this is an interactive radio
Yeah.
show. So now you mentioned Tommy. Now, Tommy was somebody who you looked up to, but that you could also relate with, because he didn't have the degrees on the wall and stuff, right?
Yeah, I could relate to him, but and then also Tommy, it was interesting. When I went there for that interview, Tommy saw something in me that nobody else saw. So he was the first successful adult at that time that told me he believed in me, and he showed me that he believed in me.
Wow.
And that was something that was very unique at that time. You got to understand that I would have walked through fire for Tommy at that time because of what he did for me and what he showed me. So it was it was such a turning point in my life.
So what advice would you give to our listeners and viewers that you got from Tommy, that now you're going to be in Tommy's place for someone else? So when we're someone who's helping to motivate and encourage someone else, what are some of the bits of advice that you got from Tommy that we can now use as leaders?
100%. I just did a video on this. Is what I believe that the true definition of love, compassion, and respect a lot of times maps to tough love. And what I mean by that is the coddling and the sugarcoating doesn't do anybody any good. You got to keep it real. And as a leader, as a mentor, as a coach, you also have to read at times when you need to pull back and when you need to push. And when you push, don't be afraid to push, because now those people that you're pushing are going to know where they stand, and they're going to know the real. And I'm a big believer, Dennis, that and nature tells us this. At the end of the day, you don't grow in your comfort zone. Struggle equals strength all day long. And if you're not sure how accurate that statement is, look at nature. The mama bird knows that it can help that baby bird get out of that shell anytime it wants, but nature reminds it that it has to let it figure it out itself, work through it, struggle, peck through, and finally break through. And the ones that can't are not going to make it.
That's good. That's good. I think that struggle brings
Equals strength.
Equals strength. Now, there's I'm reminded
We're
of
going to
a
do some
quote.
shirts on that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that would be good. Yeah. There's Larry Broughton, who's watching us right now. He's also a motivational speaker. He has spoken at the Pentagon and all over the place.
Okay.
When I interviewed him on our radio show, he brought up that there's only winning and learning. There's not winning and losing.
Yeah.
And we're not losers when we're learners. You know, what would you say about some of the what other people might classify as a loss that you've had, maybe in business experience or whatever?
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you learned, and how did you keep yourself in a state of learning when, so that you can glean something good from something that's a struggle?
Well,
How
I
does
think
struggle become a strength?
Here's what I believe, Dennis. Everything, life is all about perspective and perception. And how you perceive things is going to be vital in whether or not you move forward or get stuck in that rut. And a great example was I had a restaurant. You were talking earlier about when you did your intro that you've crashed them at raging speeds, right? Some businesses.
Right.
Well, I had a restaurant in this town that I crashed at raging speeds. Now, looking from the outside, it looks like it's going to be to a lot of people or people that aren't in the know or don't have that perspective, they're going to think it's a major fail. But really, when you step back, there were a lot of things that were a huge success. There were a lot of things that could have been done much better, right, that didn't work out. But and I had a lot of people ask me, how did you bounce back from that so quickly? And here's how I do it, Dennis, and only you can do this and only you can answer this for yourself. You look yourself in the mirror. When things don't go the way you initially planned, and some people might title that failure, some people might title that learning. Here's what you do. You look yourself in the mirror and you ask yourself this question. And if you answer it honestly, you're the only one that's going to truly know that. If I died tomorrow, would I regret not doing it? And if your answer is yes, you're good. Mm-hmm. You won. Time to move on. And I could look myself in the mirror and say, if I didn't do that restaurant and I died tomorrow, I would have died with regret.
Right.
I'm good. I could put my head on the pillow.
That's good. That's good. And it is good to, like, I just ran the LA Marathon last weekend. Yeah. And everybody's like, so are you hooked now? Are you going to run everywhere? I go, probably not. It's one of those things I wanted to check off my list. I finished it in the time I wanted to. But it doesn't mean you have to get totally involved in everything that you do. Mm. And that's why, some people can go, what? You didn't get hooked on it? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Just with you, well, you're going to try again? Well, maybe you don't need to.
Yeah, and here's a lesson I learned. Here's a major lesson I learned. I learned that I'm much better on this side of the counter than I am on that side of the counter, and I'm much better reading the menu than I am constructing the menu.
That's good.
And here's another thing, too. A lot of people ask when they see me, what happened? Oh my God, I can't believe it. And if I don't have a lot of time, here's how I sum it up, and I truly mean this. Major life lessons, major business lessons with an Ivy League price tag and never spend a minute in class.
Yeah.
There's bully burgers, baby, right?
That's true.
Wrapped up with a bow.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Dave Patton's watching here, I see too, and he's been a board member of mine for many of my businesses, and he knows what's behind the scenes too. We've got to put on what we need to put on to make things work on the outside, and on the inside, we're constantly working on building up that inner core. So I want to go back to something that you brought up, and that is you brought up something about your dad giving you the World War II advice. Is that what you said?
Well, it's interesting. I just lost both of them in the last 2 months, and they were in their 90s, and I was adopted as an infant, and but they were in their 40s when they adopted me, so they're 2 generations ahead. But I was raised by what I consider the greatest generation that we know. And we're here because of that generation. And that generation simply is lace up your boots, get to work. Nobody wants to hear about your whining. Figure it out. And that's probably why I'm such a believer in tough love and keeping it real and always letting people know where you stand.
That's a good one. And can you think of anything else that, like dad advice, that was given to you? Just random. We don't have to stay with business or anything like that. Just any bits of advice that you got from a parent.
Well, you know, when I watched him, I got more from watching him than so much. He wasn't a big pep talk guy. He was a little reserved in a way, and we were completely polar opposite. Dennis, he was a guy that worked for a company, worked for the Conrail or the railroad for 30-something years. Got up every morning the same time, took the train into the city the same time, came home, ate dinner the same time, read his paper the same time, went to bed the same time. To him, that was heaven on earth. Me, that was a living hell. I can't live that way. And it took him 40 years to stop shaking his head this way, right? Start shaking his head this way. It took him 40 years to understand who I was. But what I witnessed with him is the character traits of knowing where you stand, knowing what you see is what you get, and when he tells you something, you can take it to the bank.
That's good.
And that's to me that's the biggest lessons that I actually witnessed.
Yeah, I think the one thing you're bringing up right now too is something I'd love to talk about a little bit too, is the things that we can learn not by listening but by watching.
Yes.
So a lot of times, you hear the old "do as I say, not as I do."
Yeah.
That's bad advice. That's not a bit at all of good advice. So what are some of the things you've seen from, whether it be people that you've interviewed on your TV show, or from a parent, from Tommy, your boss, that you had the first one? What are some things that you've watched that you've learned from?
Well, one of the biggest things I love about Monster Motivator TV and why it became my oxygen, I always say that, my oxygen, is there's stories and people that come on that you get to really dig deep. And what we do on Monster Motivator TV is...
You say that 3 times fast?
I know, right? Easy for you to say.
I know, right?
Is we take them behind that black curtain and we share their rocky stories, and then I'll pull the gold nuggets out. So there's times, Dennis, where it gets, it can get real personal and then emotional, and then there's times where I need to kind of steer it out, right, and go back to a lighter subject. Or there's people like Amy Kardashian that just blew me away. She was born and raised in Syria. At 12 years old, she's living in a cave with her 6-year-old brother because her country's at war. Yeah. Lost her brother to a bomb in the living room while she was in the kitchen at 12 years old. Just crazy stuff, right? And I hear that, and it just, talk about putting things into perspective instantly. And one of the things that I think, one of the biggest tips that I love to give people is, when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling down, when you're in that funk, there's one quick way to get out. Get outside your bubble, look around, and look at the people that are begging and praying for the problems and issues you have. And if you're not sure how accurate that is, just go to a local children's hospital, watch that 12-year-old little girl that's going through her 2nd term of chemo, fighting for her life, the rock of the family, and her mom and dad are ready to crumble. Yeah. Now, look at your problems. Yeah. Now, and that's what I love about Monster Motivator TV. Man, you get so many of these people that don't even realize what they've gone through. Don't even understand that how much struggle they've been through, and the person that made them.
That's incredible. I think that is something to watch. Watch other people and see how they strengthen others, and we can learn from that, definitely. What I want to do is have you think about some of the guests that you've interviewed. No, before we go there, right. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. And this is, you mentioned yourself as an elephant before, the one that was tied down and had to break through. So by the way, welcome to Gazelle and Gary. You joined all the rest of them here watching us today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in, and we'll hit them right here on Facebook Live. The elephant in the room is that you've got some muscles on you, and so you've probably done a little bit of working out. And I know that someday you want to look like me.
Well, you know that I take the air out of them at night.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You know that's right.
So my question is, I'd love to hear some bits of advice for people that are trying to be healthy. And I'm chasing a squirrel, but we're allowed to do that on this show, by the way.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah,
I'm in a perfect place. Where was that?
Yeah. What'd you say? Was that a shiny thing? I'm going to come back later to some big tips and stuff from some of your favorite people that you've interviewed on your TV show. But prior to that, let's talk about some health stuff. It's in the room here.
Well, here's the deal. Here's what I tell people all the time. At the end of the day, your body is your vehicle to get you through this lifetime. And the better you take care of it, the smoother the ride. And that's just the reality. That's the real. And not only that, when you want to get a little deeper into that, is cutting out certain things into your daily lifestyle, which you can speak directly on, Dennis. You know it's affected you in such a positive way just by getting rid of the simple sugars and the white flour, so it doesn't spike your insulin, so it doesn't give you that big adrenaline dump at the end of the day or halfway through the day, so you're not storing all that fat, because your body reads it as metabolizing it as fat. See, it just stores, and it actually deteriorates your body from the inside out. And obviously, I'm a big proponent on overall healthy lifestyle, and we all have our vices, we all have our things, and I always tell people, look, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. I'm as boring as you can get, but I wouldn't change it any other way. But my thing is food. I love food. I mean, I love food. Yeah. And if there was an AA for food, hi, my name's Dave, and I have a problem and that's my struggle, because I love food so much, and portion sizes are not the norm. I have to work on my portion sizes, and but working out and eating clean will take you so far, and you'll be able to get so much done. And Dennis, as you know, we talk about this all the time, that now that you really create that lifestyle change, get rid of that 4-letter word diet. Right? Yeah. It's just temporary. It has to be a lifestyle change. And Dennis, you do it. Yeah. You've done it. You've changed. How much are you down?
80 pounds.
80 pounds.
Yep.
And I mean,
and so many pant sizes.
Right. If
huge.
You can't, if anybody can speak on how the polar opposite in clarity, right, in energy, in drive,
So a question I've never asked you, so I don't know. I would make a bad attorney, because you're only supposed to ask questions that you know the answer to. But I'm going to ask one. Were you ever in your life not the healthy working out guy? Did you have to make a mental switch to that?
Well, it's interesting. I started out I love sports, and I've been a big sports guy, and I started wrestling in the 4th grade. And then I wrestled, and I loved it, and that was my drive, my everything. And then freshman year, things were going really good with wrestling, and then I got into football. And then sophomore year, junior year, and senior year, it just went completely downhill. I hung around with the wrong crowd. I had my wrestling coaches following me down the hallway saying, "You got to listen. What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I went down a wrong path, and for a few years, Dennis, that haunted me. I just went down the wrong road. And even a little bit after high school, and like I said, at 19, I'm sitting in a jail cell looking at some serious time if things don't go my way, and that was part of that whole scene. So yeah, it was not good.
So what was the switch then? How did you get back into becoming the Monster Motivator?
Well, the Monster Motivator came after. That came when going through
But the healthy lifestyle,
marriage.
How did you switch to
Okay, I've always had it, right? I've always been an athlete, so it was always there. I just went off track for a few years.
Okay.
But I had a mentor that it was an older kid in my neighborhood, and I always looked up to him. He was like my hero growing up, and he went through his time and then came out, and I just kind of followed, kind of like I did with Tommy.
Right.
I just followed that because he was like everything to me at that time, and everything he did, just I wanted to do. Cool. So again, it kind of goes back to Life 101, Dennis, right? Modeling is everything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great to have a mentor. So speaking of mentors or learning from other people, now I want to go back to that question that I mentioned before, which is of all the guests that you have interviewed on your television show. Now, some of them may be watching, so I'm not going to say who was your favorite, but who was your favorite? No. What are some of the things that you can think of that have been said by others, their bits of advice that they've shared with you that you're like, I'm remembering that one, or I want to own that one?
I'd have to think about that for a minute, but I can.
Or are there some things that people talk about that seem to be the same for everyone?
Well, that's definitely simple. For me, it goes back to the most powerful trifecta in life that I believe, and whether you understand it consciously or subconsciously, it's still working. Motivation, inspiration, and perspiration. And Dennis, in my world, a lot of motivational speakers they run from the word motivation because they don't feel like it's deep enough. They don't feel like it's giving them enough credit. But at the end of the day, unless you can create momentum, what do you have? How do you get to the starting blocks? You need motivation. Then you need something that's going to tie in. It's going to come from deep inside, which is inspiration, and nothing happens without perspiration. Motivation, inspiration, perspiration. So it's always the same recipe, just different ingredients, and that's what it's interesting. We'll be talking and doing an interview, and they'll be sharing about how they were here, went in their dip, came back out of their dip, and it's the same recipe, just different ingredients. And when you're trying to make it too difficult, I always say this, Dennis, when someone is trying to make it more complicated than it is, it's either one of two things. Either they don't know what they're talking about, or they're trying to sell you something, or both.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Welcome, by the way, to Petty. And Tony says, hey, guys, great sessions, very motivating. You guys are welcome to throw some questions at us. We've got about 5 more minutes here. And I'm going to do something I haven't never done before, which this is our first show anyway. So I'm going to show outside our window. We've got some folks that are watching us that you're going to do a little VIP interview with, questions and answers afterwards, too. So they're here to see you and ask some questions of you. So if you guys are on there right now, it says, where can we see Dave live and here in the near future? So that's actually what, Tony, how did you know? That's what I was going to ask next. Tell us, how can people follow you and learn from you? Maybe website, smoke signals. How do they follow you?
We got an event coming up next Wednesday, I believe it is, at the Marietta Chamber. So we're going to be doing a live.
So give us an exact date of that, because some people may be watching this show later.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually post it. So when you go to reshare, because it's live, we're going to repost all the info.
Oh, okay,
This way, in case somebody doesn't have a pen, I learned that through.
Yeah, and if they're watching it after, we don't want them to show up next Wednesday, and that's like 3 years from now.
Yes, so we'll post everything. We have Facebook event page and everything else, but it's going to be a live Q&A. And, for me, Dennis, I love the Q&A. My goal is to get my brand to the point where I can do 10 minutes of my bio and the rest in Q&A.
Yeah, that's good.
To be honest with you, yeah.
So tell us how people can reach you. Your website, credit card numbers, anything you want to share.
That's right. Social Security. Not hard to find. Dave Daley, Daley, like Monster Motivator, on all my social media. That's our website too, davedaleymm.com. And that's you can check us out on the YouTube channel as well. And not hard to find.
Now the website itself was
Dave Daley, mm.com.
.com, got it. Yep. And you're on Facebook, obviously.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channul. We can, and not hard to find.
Yeah, we'll tag you in one of the comments here on the show as well. So we also are wanting to kind of encourage everybody to pay attention to the bits of advice that you get every day, and become an advice giver. That's really what it's all about, isn't it?
It is.
We grow to a point. You and I both. I think I'm free to say we're both over 20 now.
Yeah.
So just barely.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, me too. Yeah. That's it. So think about, what do you learn from people, and how do you retain that information? And I'm curious to find out if, again, I'm going to ask another question I don't know the answer to. Is do you keep any kind of a journal, or do you keep any kind of a list of great sayings from other people, or things that you've learned? How do you remember them? Or you to repeat them to yourself? What do you do?
Yeah, I do have certain ones that I really resonate with. But if anybody that follows me on social media, we do a lot of the inspirational sayings, because I just believe that the affirmations because what I call the game changer is your self-talk, and the only way to change that conditioning, that self-talk, is to reprogram just like a computer.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I want to leave you guys with a thought too as we finish up here. We got about 30 seconds. So I think the self-talk is great, and I'll leave with a bit of advice too, since I'm an expert. I'm considered an expert hobbyist in neurolinguistics and body language, and accidentally became an internationally board-certified clinical hypnotherapist. And boy, say that 3 times fast, right? But the self-talk is great, but don't do it in the morning in front of the mirror, because your conscious mind will tell you, yeah, right, I'm handsome. Yeah, right, but you got that thing on your face. I'm successful. Yeah, right, but you remember that last failure you had. Instead, do it at night right before you fall asleep, because that's when your alpha waves are high, and that's when you're actually going to believe it. So go to sleep at night, putting a repeating mantra into your mind about things that you are now. Speak in the present tense. So that helps with that positive self-talk. So thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Thanks for being our first guest. You will always be our first guest.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And since we don't have any intro, outro music, we're going to sing a song together, right? Just kidding. That's a bit of advice. If you can't sing, don't do it. You guys have a great day. Thanks for joining us. It's time for your questions and answers outside.
Let's do it.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye now.